and welcome back to another episode of The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, the show where I, the curator, discuss my personal favorite show of all time, personal favorite franchise of all time, Doctor Who. And as we reach the end of yet another month, I did something that I decided to have almost every other month, or almost every single month, which is to have a guest. And thankfully, I managed to secure one pretty much last minute because, full disclosure, it's been a hell of a week. And thankfully, my good friend Soda was kind enough to step up and grace me with his presence. How are you doing, Mr. Soda?
Allergies are kicking my ass, but I'm glad to be here.
Well, you know what they say. If the allergies are kicking your ass, you damn well kick their ass back.
I try.
As always, we have to start with the birthday section that I'm really starting to think I need a graphic for. Maybe I can Photoshop something on my free time if I have something like that eventually. But starting us off, we have a sort of a slower week compared to last week. We had like a bunch of really big ones. There's still a lot of them, and I still have to trim down the list as I tend to do every week. But
really, that's trimmed down. Wow!
Trust me, there's like 20, and I try to trim them down to at least below 10 every week. And like I said, this week there aren't major big ones, but there are a few ones that I felt were. Hold on. Not expecting that, but yeah. Hold on, let me just put my phone on silent. So thank you. We're doing this live, guys. It's a lot of fun. So
I appreciate my ringtone. Just give me a second. Keep talking.
So starting us off on June 23rd, are you with me? We have Caitlin Blackwood, who, of course, as you can see in this picture, played the young version of Emilia Pond, not to be confused with Amy Pond. And she's also, as you gracefully pointed out to me, she's Karen Gillan's cousin. And the weird thing is, nowadays she actually looks more like Amy Pond than she did back then, which is both wonderful and creepy both at the same time. Now, another one that
you hear that?
What?
You hear that? That's my ringtone.
Nice. I love it. Next, you threw me off. We have Mr. Robert Goodman. You mightn't be able to recognize the name or the face, mainly because he played a bunch of really small roles on a bunch of episodes from the 4th, 5th, and 5th Doctors. Pretty much all of the 5th Doctor's eras, I should say. Pretty much all of them were uncredited, and just like I did last week, I decided to correct that bit of injustice, in my opinion, and credit the man on his birthday. Also, June 24th, there was a lot of birthdays on the same day, apparently, this week. We have Miss Yasmin Page. She played the character of Maria Jackson in Season 1 of The Sarah Jane Adventures. She also reprised her role in one episode of Season 2. Also on June 24th, we have Anthony DeBeck. The Beak. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing the name. You might not be able to recognize him again. He was actually the French news announcer for most of the Tennant and Sarah Jane Adventures episodes. So like every time they popped like several different news channels, he was the guy for the French news outlet.
Ça c'est bon.
Sadly, he passed away in 2013.
Ça c'est pas bon. Ça c'est pas bon.
At the very young age of 46. So I felt like I needed to point that out. Now, next, also on June 24th, an actor mostly known for Game of Thrones, I believe, Ian Glenn.
Sir Frenzo.
He he played Father Octavian in The Time of Angels and Flesh and Stone, an 11th Doctor story. And I believe he also played Batman in the Titans TV show.
Yep. Me and my friends, because of his character arc in Game of Thrones, we jokingly call him Sir Friendzone because was in the friend zone for so long in the series.
Oh, great. Game of Thrones jokes. Next, we have Roy Marston. He played Dr. Stoker in Martha Jones' debut episode, Smith and Jones, and he also played a major role in a Big Finish two-parter named Human Resources. So felt it was big enough of an inclusion there. And that was June 25th. Finally, we moved away from the June 24th area. Now we have Roger Mary Lynch. Where is the image? Roger Mary Leach. He was a production designer of pretty much all of, or rather most of the Fourth Doctor's first and second seasons. Next, we have an actress that I was legitimately shocked and surprised to know that she was in Doctor Who. Nitsa Shaul. She's an Israeli actress, which I'm mostly familiar from the Israeli movies that she made that have since become iconic staples of Independence Day. She was in an episode with the Fifth Doctor called Warriors of the Deep. Yeah, the episode itself is infamously terrible, but it's got Nitsa Shaul in it, so I decided it's worth a mention. Now, rounding up our list, once again, June 25th, we have Sheridan Smith. She played the character of Lucy Miller, who is the sort of signature companion of the Eighth Doctor on Finish. There's a really interesting story there. She was, I believe, the third main proper companion of the Eighth Doctor on the Big Finish serials, sort of coming in as a replacement for what many consider to be his signature companion, Charlie Pollard, as well as his other Big Finish companion, Karis. So to the wonderful long list of people that I so gracefully chopped down for this episode, thank you all. We quite literally could not do this without you. Now, moving on to the main topic of today's episode, which is mostly inspired from a YouTube video that I discovered a couple of weeks ago by a man called Mr. TARDIS. That's the name of the YouTube channel. If you could do me a favor and later just add his video in the description of this episode. I'll send you a link. And also just check out the episode itself, because it's really, the video itself, it's really, really well made. And it goes over every single Doctor when they were announced as the Doctor, the method in which they were announced, as well as when they announced that they're leaving. And you can tell I'm taking this episode very seriously because I finally have notes that I brought with me. You're not looking.
Oh, Jesus.
I finally brought notes so that I would be sure to not forget anything. Now, we'll go over every single episode, every single Doctor over here. And the interesting thing that I discovered watching this video is that almost every single Doctor was announced in a completely different way, especially in the modern series. Yes. But there's a wide variety of ways for the Doctors to have been announced, rather the casting of these Doctors to be announced.
Only two that stick out. One obviously is the current one, Judy Gatwa, because but the other one that I remember tuning in for was Peter Capaldi's when they did that one, because I was in the middle of kind of where you are. I was kind of like that at that time, so I was like, okay, I gotta watch it. So I sat in front of my TV and watched it. I was like, dude, Capaldi, I love him. That's really the only one I like that it sticks out to me. I don't remember Jodie Whittaker's, if I'm being honest.
You don't remember any of the other ones?
No, because I was when I started watching, Matt Smith was already the Doctor.
Well, that's good, because my original plan for this episode was to just ask you, how do you think this Doctor was revealed, and reveal it to you. So,
well, I can still do that for the newer ones. I'll gladly take a shot if you want me to.
Yeah, that was my original intention. Now, obviously, we are starting with the original, you might say, Mr. William Hartnell. Now, obviously,
So he was just hired for the role.
yeah, pretty much. Now, obviously, we as Doctor Who fans all know that the show itself began on November the 23rd, 1963, the day after the assassination of President Kennedy.
Yep.
Now, as soon as you get back in your seat, would you be kind enough to guess the date that William Hartnell was officially announced to the public as playing the main title role of this brand new children's TV serial, as it was known at the time?
I'm just going to take a shot in the dark, September 11th. I'm assuming it was before.
You weren't too far off. It was September the 20th.
Oh, Jesus.
It is crazy to think how quickly they were able to turn around a show back in the day, from announcing the characters to filming everything to actually putting it out in television on TV. And actually, it was back in the day where they had a very limited tape to film with. They pretty much had to get everything in one take.
And they reuse sets. Like as you go throughout the series, you see they reuse sets from Doctor Who. They reuse costumes from all over. Like it's famous. What is it? Costume from Empire Strikes Back appears in Doctor Who at one point.
Yeah. Like no, they took a costume from Doctor Who and used it in.
Yeah.
But essentially, the iconic look of Bosk, the bounty hunter, the Trandoshan bounty hunter.
And if anybody out there wants to watch, which you can, the story of the origins of Doctor Who, An Adventure in Space and Time, that's what I was going to get, 50. Definitely worth watching. And it also gives us David Bradley in his very first appearance as the first Doctor.
Yeah. And I'm going to take a lot of heat for this. I think it's better than Day of the Doctor. But that's just me and my love of the first Doctor.
See, I look at it as separate because it's whereas Day of the Doctor is canon and lore, this is like it's its own thing.
It's a celebration of the show.
Yeah,
that's why I love it so much.
And of course, like my favorite scene is something that clearly didn't happen in real life, but I love that they did it. It's when the first Doctor meets the 11th Doctor for like that brief moment.
Funny you should mention that. Allegedly, if you look at William Hartnell's final moments in the TARDIS, must have been a malfunction with the TARDIS console, but some of the switches were flickering on their own, and those are the exact same switches that Matt Smith is flickering in his appearance, which
my God,
it gave birth to the theory of the 11th Doctor's ghost in that episode. Obviously, Mark Gatiss, who produced the entire thing, the special, knew about that, and he used that as sort of a way of explaining why those switches were flickering, but it started this massive rabbit hole theory about the 11th Doctor's ghost.
I never knew that, but I love that. That is a sign of a true fan, that they can pay attention to that much detail and do that. I had no idea. That is cool. That is cool.
And also, even David Bradley looking at the 11th Doctor is sort of similar to William Hartnell apparently looking at something off screen, potentially his cast and crew members, but they use that as him looking at Matt Smith. That's
genius. That is genius. I love it.
Now, the announcement itself, which thank you so much for bringing up An Adventure in Time and Space, it was actually announced to the public in a photo shoot, a very public photo shoot with William Hartnell standing alongside Carol Ann Ford, who played Susan Foreman, Jacqueline Hill, who played Barbara Wright, William Russell, who is still alive, by the way, who played Ian Chesterton, as well as Verity Lambert, the original producer and sort of pseudo showrunner at the time. And they actually took those exact pictures. I believe I have one of those pictures. I'll send it to you later, but it's not in a format that StreamYard can use, so I can't show it to you right now. But they took those same pictures, and Mr. TARDIS does show those pictures in his video, and they recreated them in this movie in various different points.
Yes, I remember that photo shoot. Yeah, I do remember that in the movie.
Now, William Hartnell has announced uh, in August 6th, 1966, that he would be leaving, and he announced it via the same way that most of these doctors have announced themselves in a newspaper column in a sort of entertainment TV magazine. Now, Patrick Trout.
Before you get on, forgive me. This was pretty much done because William Hartnell his health was deteriorating, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, and at one point they were thinking of ending the show altogether. But thankfully, they had the foresight to recast, which gave us the wonderful show that we're still talking about to this very day.
And it's a great way to continue on a show with a great explanation of recasting. Oh, he's got multiple forms. He just regenerates.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm pretty damn sure that the Star Trek creators took a lot of inspiration from a lot of the stuff from Doctor Who, particularly in the character of Spock, because every time the plot needs them to do something that they can't do, they're like, "Oh, Vulcans can do this. Obviously, it's a known fact that Vulcans can do that thing that's convenient for the plot." So I wouldn't be surprised if, dang it, why am I blinking on the name?
Gene Roddenberry.
Roddenberry, yeah. The French is gonna kill me, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, because if you actually watch the original 1966 Star Trek, there's a lot of Doctor Who influences there.
That's an idea for video for you down the line. Doctor Who influences in other forms of entertainment.
I'm gonna be completely honest with you. While we're still recording the episode, I had considered having either Taco or Marie Wilson to talk about some of the cross inspirations that Star Wars took from Doctor Who and Doctor Who took from Star Wars. That's an idea that I have pinned down on the whiteboard in my head.
I think we'll finally get Taco to talk Doctor Who that way.
The question is, will he want to?
Yeah,
that is the question. Now, as I mentioned, August 6th was the announcement of William Hartnell leaving. When do you think Patrick Troughton was officially announced, and how?
More than likely a press release, because that's how they did it at the time. And I'm going to stick with September, because if I'm mistaken, they didn't have Troughton cast when they announced Hartnell was leaving. So I'm going to say in September again.
Well, you were right on one account. September does actually play a major role in a lot of these announcements. September 2nd, it was.
2 days before my birthday.
And here's the thing, because this might actually surprise you to know, and I was actually very shocked when I saw this in Mr. Tardis's incredible video. This is actually the most understated announcement of a doctor out of all of them.
Really?
It was in a newspaper article that included about 26 words, including the title, hidden away in a newspaper right before the weather section. It was tiny, shorter than a paragraph. That's how small of a bit of attention was directed towards the casting of a brand new actor in what was at the time a massive successful TV hit like Doctor Who.
And the intergalactic hobo never gets any respect. But technically, I was right. That's still a press release. That's still a press release. A press release is anything is any announcement that's been put in any form of press. That's technically what it is.
Okay.
That is, I can't believe how understated that is. This is like, I might as well throw it in with the obituaries.
Yeah. Here's a little bit of a tiny whiny thing that I noticed. The article itself, including the title, as I mentioned, 26 words, came out 26 days after the announcement that Hartnell was leaving.
Okay, you think that was coincidence?
Well, as the doctor and Sarah Jane taught me, there's no such thing as coincidence.
So that's fair. That's fair.
Now, speaking of coincidences, actually, I don't know why I mentioned that, but would you now? Obviously, as we all know, Patrick Troughton continued the role of Doctor Who, continuing from the 4th season, because something that most people don't really realize is that Hartnell already had 2 episodes in season 4 when he regenerated into Patrick Troughton. So Troughton didn't technically have a full first season. He continued on from from William Hartnell's 4th season, kept on going for 3 more seasons. Then he announced on January 8th, 1969, that he would be leaving. Now, here is something that potentially could lead to an interesting discussion, but how long do you think it took for the announcement of John Pertwee as the next Doctor? And forgive me if I'll turn on the light for a second.
Yeah, no worries. I'm probably expecting late spring, early summer, so I would probably say June.
Have you been reading my notes?
No.
Have you seen that video that I'm referencing?
Nope, but I will afterwards. I'm just using logic.
June 17th. 6 months and a week and a half after the announcement of Patrick Troughton, which is a bit of a side story there, because obviously the official announcement of John Pertwee came 6 months, half a year after Patrick Troughton's departure from the show. The show itself was off the air for most of that time, and yet the comic book companies and short story companies still were producing Doctor Who stories and Doctor Who comic book storylines during that time, but they didn't know who the next Doctor would be, so they just kept producing more and more. And obviously, the announcement itself came before the official first episode of John Pertwee debuted in 1970, but these things have to keep staying in constant production, so they kept producing more and more comic book and short stories with Patrick Troughton that debuted, or rather went to print, after the War Games, which was Patrick Troughton's final episode, where he was trialed and exiled by the Time Lords to stay on Earth for as long as they deemed proper. Now, that whole event led to something that fans commonly classify as Season 6B. Have you ever heard the term Season 6B?
No.
Season 6B is essentially the time, well, the placement of all these comic book stories that feature the second Doctor after the War Games, after his trial by the Time Lords, and it is a time when he's sent by the Time Lords on various different missions by the CIA, the Celestial Intervention Agency, to fix certain things that the CIA deemed is improper in what they consider to be the proper timeline. That was mainly due to the comic books and stories. There is one novel, I believe, that takes place roughly around that same time, but this also led into the second Doctor's return in The Two Doctors, because he does heavily mention that the Time Lords are sending him and Jamie on missions together, because there are very, very few points during the second Doctor's timeline when it's him and Jamie traveling alone without either Victoria, Zoe, or Ben and Polly. So that's a bit of an interesting thing.
That concept, that the premise of Season 6B, does that not remind you of something? The premise? The first season of Legends of Tomorrow.
No, not really.
No. I mean, like, in the broad sense, like it's a bunch of heroes sent off to fix anomalies in time by somebody who exists outside of our time.
Okay. That season, it was just.
Sorry, maybe season one. You said the concept of Legends of Tomorrow.
No, but here's my issue with what you're saying, is because season one was just Rip Hunter, played by Arthur Darvill, who also played Rory Williams, or rather Rory Pond, he didn't get any help from the Time Masters, so he basically did all that on his own.
True.
And he didn't just try to fix problems with the timeline. He was just trying to stop Vandal Savage from becoming the powerful dictator that he became. So it doesn't really.
Okay, no, that's fair. That's fair. I tried and I failed.
Meanwhile, back to Doctor Who. Once again, Robert Goodman announced his departure in a newspaper column, same thing as John Pertwee, which was on February 8th, exactly 1 month and 5 years after Patrick Troughton announced his departure.
What year?
1974.
I think that was like the day after my aunt was born, maybe. My aunt's February 7th, around that time. I'm just not sure of the year. That would be funny if that was the case.
And also, because I neglected to mention that, there was a... unlike the announcement of Patrick Troughton, there was also... It was just relegated to... John Pertwee's announcement was relegated to newspaper articles, except there were a lot more articles than just the one tiny one that...
one little blurb in the back with the produce.
Yeah. And now we move on to what is arguably the most iconic Doctor of all time, Tom Baker. I mentioned previously that John Pertwee announced his departure on February 8th. How long do you think it took for Tom Baker's announcement?
I'm going to go May. I'm going to go a little earlier.
Well, you were way off for the first time on this video. It was less than a week. February 15th.
Oh, damn.
And at that point, in the mid-70s, there was a little bit more than just newspaper articles. There were a lot of newspaper articles, which also included an interview from Tom Baker himself, who, something I didn't even realize, was at the time a bricklayer. He was...
I've read that story. He was contemplating leaving acting, and then he got the role.
Yeah. And he was in an interview and a photo shoot alongside Elizabeth Sladen, who also played Sarah Jane Smith.
Sarah Jane.
Now, obviously, Tom Baker has remained in the role for a record-setting 7 years.
Yeah.
Just think about that. This show that replaces the main character, the main actor, every few years or so, this actor was the main character for 7 years. Just think about how many other TV shows, still to this day, don't even make it to 7 seasons. And he just played a role in a much larger tapestry of roles for 7 seasons.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get picky about it, you could also technically include McGann, but it's not the same because
I'm talking about on-screen seasons.
That's what I was saying. Like Tom Baker was more consistently playing, like he actually was playing that time, whereas McGann just did a one movie and then.
Because from that point of view, I can't remember the name, but the guy who voiced Superman on the Super Friends multiple shows basically played the Superman for longer than any other actor. But Tom Welling still played Clark Kent for the longest run in live action.
I'm trying to think if it's the same guy I'm thinking of, because if it is, he's the guy that actually came up with the different octaves for Superman's voice.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was good. Blanking on his name right now, but when they did the radio, when they first did Just Superman on the radio first time, they're like, how the hell are we going to differentiate between the two? And that's where the speak high like this for Clark Kent, and I'm going to speak down here like this for Superman came from.
That's also where the idea of kryptonite came from.
Yeah.
The radio play. Now, because it was to give the actor a break every once in a while.
Yeah.
Now, 6 years and 6 months, roughly, after the announcement of Tom Baker's involvement in Doctor Who, on October 24th, he announced his departure. Now, this is interesting. How do you think he announced it to the world that he would be leaving? And keep it at that point, Newspaper columns and tiny articles wasn't going to cut it anymore, especially with the new showrunner being John Nathan Turner, the masterful, well, not masterful, but the great showman that he wanted to be. How do you think that was announced to the world?
I wouldn't be surprised if he did it on an interview. Honestly,
you were correct. A nationwide interview on a main BBC channel of him and Hugh Laurie, I believe was the name of the interviewer, just standing next to a TARDIS, discussing him playing the role of Doctor Who, where he dropped almost nonchalantly that he would be leaving and that he's excited for whoever will be the next person to take on the role. How long do you think it took for Peter Davison, the fifth Doctor, to be announced, and what method do you think was employed?
When was it? What year? It would have been 70. What year was Pete Davison announced?
I said that Tom Baker announced his departure on October 24th, 1980.
Thank you. Okay, based on that, I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to go towards a younger audience and did something like On Top of the Pops or something like that. Like it introduced him into like a show that reaches everybody of all ages. I don't know.
That's an interesting line of thinking, but it's wrong.
Oh.
Because on November 5th, fittingly enough, for the fifth Doctor, November 5th, Peter Davison was announced on the same show that Tom Baker announced his departure. A nationwide interview with the same interviewer, where they also name dropped the fact that he would be the youngest actor at the time to play the title role. And that is also the same way he announced his departure roughly 3 years later on July 28th, 1983. So this is interesting for me because July 28th, 1983, the 20th anniversary of the show hadn't even aired yet.
Oh, wow.
And also, Davison had at least, for the most part, one more season to go before his replacement came along, Colin Baker. How long, when do you think, when would you say Colin Baker was announced as the sixth Doctor?
I'm going to stick with the spring theme, so I'm going to go April.
Wrong again, to quote Rafiki. It was less than a month later on August 19th, 1983. And the method, if you would be so kind as to guess.
I'm probably going to do another. It's got to be another promotional video or something, an interview. That seems to be the way they were going.
Well, you were mostly correct on that. It was a massive photo call, photo shoot, whichever way you want to call it, which is why I decided that this would be the
gotcha. Okay, that's where that comes from. Okay, because I've seen the picture. I love the picture, but it's good to know that that's how they announced it.
Yeah, that wasn't confirmed to be the Doctor's costume at the time. It was just Colin Baker with a much shorter head of hair, a dapper suit with Nicola Brandt, who played Harry Brown at the time, just doing a lot of pictures alongside the TARDIS, which also was followed up by an interview with Colin Baker, which I believe was again the same interviewer. I might be wrong on that one. But since we brought up the Doctor's costume, fun fact, Colin Baker hated this costume.
Oh, this one? I have heard that, and I can see why. It's pretty loud.
Something else. The costume that he actually had envisioned for the sixth Doctor.
I know this was similar to Eccleston's costume that ended up happening in the first season of the reboot. I heard about that.
Yeah.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine that in earlier Who, like just a Doctor looking like that?
I can imagine Sylvester McCoy looking like that. However, I will say that look does fit well with the Ninth Doctor, especially following the events of the Time War. So exactly. As a story thing, it makes so much sense. Okay, now we reach the tragic part of this episode. Colin Baker's run as the Doctor was
controversial at best.
Yeah, people like to say that this current era of Doctor Who is the most controversial that Doctor Who has ever been. You have no idea how wrong that is. Like, the show was off the air for 18 months during Colin Baker's run as the Doctor. And fun fact, well, not really fun, but just fact, they were really inspired by the Live Aid performance. They decided to do. I can't remember if it was Live Aid or if it was the We Are the World, but they were the cast and crew were inspired by that, and they decided to release a musical album to bring Doctor Who back called Doctor in Distress. People like to make comparisons between Doctor Who and Star Wars a lot of the time. This is basically on the same level as the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Oh, really?
It was dreadful. They went all out on trying to get talent for this, including the likes of Elton John at the time, which thankfully for him refused. But really, the only proper musical talent they had on that thing was at the moment, or rather at the time, completely obscure and unknown composer by the name of Hans Zimmer, who did the music for Doctor in Distress.
Oh, that's awesome.
If you ever feel like getting yourself, look that up. But
you've listened to it, haven't you?
Listen to parts of it, but
which is worse? The holiday special or this?
Holiday special because it's longer.
Oh, that's good enough reason for me.
You want to slice your throat more times watching the holiday special than this, definitely. But again, still sticking on this tragic streak with the Sixth Doctor. How do you think to put it subtly, his replacement was announced to the world and more importantly to him?
If I remember correctly, it was announced without him knowing it. Basically, he was fired, wasn't he?
Oh, he knew about it.
Oh, okay.
Somewhere in the middle of January. Sorry. No, is it January? No, it's November, I think. I really hope I wrote this down correctly. I'm not misremembering. Somewhere in the middle of November 1986, he received a phone call from producer John Nathan Turner telling him that he's fired.
Yeah.
They literally fired him via a phone call. And the thing is, there was still about a month or so of episodes that hadn't aired yet from his final season. And he still had to keep doing interviews and press conferences promoting the show, knowing that he's not the Doctor anymore. And Mr. TARDIS also includes in his video several clips from him doing promotional stuff from a kids' TV show, fully knowing that he's no longer going to be the Doctor, and nobody else in the room knew about it. Which is just
that has to be hard. That has to be hard.
And the worst part of it is he was so badly screwed over by the BBC from this whole experience that he just refused to show up for his regeneration scene.
Yes, I'd heard that. They
regeneration scene,
or something in a wake.
Which is why in the regeneration scene in The Time of the Rani, which is Sylvester McCoy's debut episode, it was Sylvester McCoy wearing his Sixth Doctor's costume and a Colin Baker wig, which is very noticeable if you watch the episode.
Yeah, and they never revealed it on screen what caused him to regenerate.
They never showed Colin Baker's face. They flipped the face while in mid-regeneration while it was changing.
I'm just on Wikipedia here, reading a little bit about the Sixth Doctor, and it says when the TARDIS is attacked by the Rani, the Sixth Doctor was somehow injured and regenerated in the Seventh Doctor. The exact cause of the regeneration, however, has never been revealed on screen.
Yeah, sometimes there's conflicting reports. It's either the radiation from the attack or just he hit his head on the console. I believe there's a Big Finish story that explained, or rather gave him a proper send-off, but I haven't gotten to that part yet. But as I mentioned, somewhere in the middle of November, he got the phone call, which was revealed in his sacking, for lack of a better word, was revealed by another newspaper column. When?
I'd probably say January.
Close. mid-December.
I was thinking December. I forgot. Go to New Year.
About a month after he was announced. Now, how long do you think it took for Sylvester McCoy to be announced?
I'm gonna probably go October, November. Like I think it probably a good amount of time.
Okay, now I'm really starting to think I might have written this wrong, but it was actually the 2nd of March, 1987, according to my notes here. Again, I really hope I'm.
The year of my birth.
Happy birthday! You got a brand new doctor for your birthday. So yeah, if this is actually it does make sense because it's December. So yeah, 4 months later, 1987. Yeah, makes perfect sense. 1987, March 2nd, and it was very similarly to Colin Baker's announcement, another photo call with a very badly looking TARDIS prop. And obviously, he since he was still to this day, by the way, the shortest actor to play the Doctor, he was standing on a long chair to
physically. Yeah. He's the one that I look at him out of all the Doctors. I'm like, he's probably the one that is the one that looks like the Doctor the least, if that makes sense to me.
Well, depending on which version, because as fans know, there are 2 different versions of Sylvester McCoy's Doctor.
Well, I'm looking at the one that you see in all the promotional stuff and what have you. It's just, I don't know. I love Sylvester McCoy. Don't get me wrong. I love him as Radagast in the Hobbit movies. It's just you look at him and it's like one of these things is not like the other for a moment, and then you're like, okay, he's the Doctor. But
that's why they changed his character significantly in a single season. That's why I mentioned the 2 versions. Speaking of Radagast, I don't know if you watched the episode I did a couple of weeks ago, but I'm gonna operate on the assumption that you didn't. Did you know that he was at one point considered to play Bilbo Baggins in the original Lord of the Rings?
No, but I believe it. He definitely he looks like he would be a Hobbit. Like he could fit into the Hobbit role, which he does technically.
And, obviously, him and Ian McKellen are great friends. They have a really good working relationship. However, do you know who was also at one point rumored to play Gandalf before Ian McKellen was cast?
Yeah, Sean Connery.
Aside from him,
then no.
I'm pretty sure Sean Connery was rumored to be Dumbledore, not Gandalf.
Oh, okay.
He refused to do that because he didn't think that this kid's book series would be successful. So instead, he went and did The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which is the movie that ended his movie career, his acting career.
Fun popcorn movie to watch if you want to watch something stupid. But yeah, I can't believe that ended his career.
Yeah. So no other guesses?
No, off the top of my head, I don't.
Tom Baker.
Oh.
And ever since I realized that when I was researching information for the episode from a few weeks ago, just the image of Tom Baker as Gandalf and Sylvester McCoy as Bilbo smoking a pipe together has not left my head since. Now,
that's an image.
How do you think?
The closest thing we got to that is him as the Bendu, though, so I'm not complaining.
Yeah, I love the Bendu. I wish they bring him back in Ahsoka. Now, how do you think it was announced, and when do you think it was announced that McCoy is no longer the 7th Doctor?
Well, I don't know the specific timeline, but I know it was when they announced the new Doctor Who TV movie that they were doing for America, because he's in there, and that's where they show his regeneration. So I get a feeling that's when they announced it was in the press release for the movie. Yep,
it was. Somewhere in the middle of January, that's the January I was confusing with earlier, in 1996, which is a few months before the movie itself. Here is where Mr. TARDIS struggled the most. Because you'd think that such a heavily publicized event would be easier to find the official press releases for. It wasn't. It was actually harder than finding the original article from Patrick Troughton's announcement.
Really?
There are conflicting dates galore. No one seems to be quite on the same page as to the exact date of the press release or the announcement. It was either announced through Doctor Who magazine, which was about a month after the official announcement. It was announced on multiple platforms, as written here on my notes in the newspaper, Doctor Who magazine, in the press release, the BBC Worldwide press release. So many different outlets, all reporting the same thing on different dates, and no one can be quite sure when exactly official announcement for either McCoy's departure or McGann's announcement, but somewhere in the middle of January. And here's another fun fact that I've learned about a week or two ago, because in the official press release where they announced McGann as the 8th Doctor, he had a very short hairstyle, very, very similar to Christopher Eccleston's hair.
Oh.
So here's something pretty interesting that I discovered through listening to Paul McGann interview in a Big Finish episode he did a while ago, years ago. He actually auditioned for the role of the 8th Doctor with the much longer hair that we see him having in the movie.
I had heard that because I watched the making of the movie documentary.
Did you also know that by the time after he did the audition, he went off and did a couple of other roles where he shaved his hair because he wanted to have shorter hair. Mm. But the producers who already cast him as the 8th Doctor at the time just couldn't get the image of the Doctor with the longer hair out of their head. So the entire time in the movie, he was wearing a wig, a very uncomfortable and itchy wig the entire time he was doing the movie. Which makes sense why his hair constantly stays the same. It doesn't really...
Yeah, it does. And fun fact, Doctor Who the movie filmed in Vancouver. The only Doctor Who thing to be fully filmed outside of the Great Britain.
At the time.
Well, I mean, you got episodes, but I mean, like, I'm talking like, there was never any seasons that were fully filmed outside of Britain or whatever. This is the only thing that this Doctor has, and it was in Canada.
Even the scenes inside the TARDIS?
Yeah. None of that. Well, because it was looked at as originally an American reboot. They wanted to make an American TV show, so that's why it was an American production for the movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Now, obviously, McGann was never actually announced that he would not be the Doctor anymore because the movie failed to impress audiences. Yeah. So
and even then, like for years, I'd say for a couple of years, people, from what I read, people were like, well, is he in canon? Because they never really referenced him until Family of Blood, no? Yeah.
Human Nature.
Yeah, Human Nature. Sorry. Yeah, until then when we saw the...
in the drawing in the Journal of Impossible Thing. And that is why when Christopher Eccleston announced, to get us back on track, they were very, very careful not to call him the 9th Doctor. They just called him the Doctor.
Yeah.
Even though for some reason, if you actually look at the Doctor Who credits, he's credited as the 9th Doctor.
Yeah. And what's interesting is Tennant fought to be credited as the Doctor. Because it wasn't really? I'd read that they didn't start doing that until Tennant again.
Fun fact, for the first 10-ish seasons of the show, in the classic era, he was the Doctor was just credited as Doctor Who. Yeah. It was only until John Pertwee's final season where they actually changed the intro and outro screens where they started credited him as the Doctor. Mm. Now, you might be able to, actually, I don't know if you noticed from memory, but when exactly do you think it was announced that the show would be coming back? And when do you think they announced Christopher Eccleston to be the next Doctor?
I'm going to say it was in 2004.
For both?
For both.
Can you give me a more specific date?
I'm going to go probably springtime for the announcement of the show coming back, and then I would probably say probably in fall, early winter for when they announced Eccleston.
Oh, wow. You could not be more on the opposite end. First of all, the announcement of the show coming back was in 26th of September, 2003.
Oh.
Still 2 months away from the 40th anniversary. The announcement of Eccleston joining the cast as the Ninth Doctor, or rather as the Doctor, came in March 22nd, 2004. We have the spring-fall connection. It was just completely flipped in a way. And how do you think it was announced that Christopher Eccleston would be the Doctor? Just out of curiosity.
See, that one I could see them sticking with the press release.
Nope. It was on something that was relatively new at the time, the internet.
Oh.
It was in the BBC website where they actually announced this article. And it was also, well, we'll get to that in just a minute. How do you think it was announced that Eccleston left the show? There's a pretty big, interesting story there.
Okay, that one I'm pretty sure was done in a press release. That was never done visually.
It was done on the website.
So, press release on the website. Anytime a company announces anything, it's a press release.
I'm going to ask you to be a bit more specific. However, the original plan was that the reveal of the next Doctor would have happened at the end of the parting of the ways, when Eccleston would regenerate into David Tennant.
Yeah.
However, there was with the burgeoning the early days of the internet, it was also came the early days of leaking stuff and fans finding out stuff not in the way that the content creators intended to find that out, which is why it was announced in the BBC website as opposed to just waiting for the show, which Eccleston did not really much appreciate. They didn't even tell him. He did not know, and he discovered that by apparently he was out shopping and people kept walking up to him asking him why he left the show because they read it in the website. They didn't even tell him, and he announced he settled with Russell T Davies in the production team that he would be doing it as quietly as possible. He would still promote the show, and they actually announced it.
Isn't that why there's still friction between them? Is because of how it was handled?
Friction. And the thing is, it was announced officially on March 30th, 2005, which I believe was still a couple of weeks after the debut of the first episode, Rose. So he still had to keep promoting the show while everyone else knew that he left, that he wouldn't be the Doctor anymore. That's why he, for a very long time, he refused to do anything related to Doctor Who, which just, again, probably not quite as bad as the Colin Baker thing, but it's still just really, really wrong.
Yeah, and he still basically says, I'm not going to do anything with the BBC with them. Pretty much. Like, he might have softened his stance a little bit, but he's like, I'll just
stance on Doctor Who because he is doing Big Finish now.
Yeah. But when it comes
and now that Doctor Who is no longer being produced by the BBC officially, he announced that he could come back as a standalone without any other doctors.
Yes, I'd read that, which is like, okay, would be interesting, but I kind of want to see him with the other doctors. Not gonna lie.
I mean, if the guy doesn't want to do it,
no, for sure. Like, my wishes be nothing to what he wants to do. Like, that's just what I want. But if you get him back and fit like in an actual canon thing as the Ninth Doctor, even if it's just him by himself, give it to me, please.
And what I want It's just him and Russell have a sit down privately, maybe over tea, and just talk things out and hash things out. Because they were good friends before Doctor Who, which is the main reason why he asked him to audition for the Doctor. They were good friends. They worked on a number of projects. So I don't want this friction with the people, people involved.
Here's something. I didn't know my cousin watched Doctor Who before I did. Eccleston is her doctor. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And what a very, very excellent doctor to have as your main one. Which, because he is absolutely
fantastic.
Right, you are.
If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be here talking. Like, I mean, if it wasn't for him pretty much knocking it out of the park, we wouldn't be here talking about it probably.
Yeah. Like I say every episode, we quite literally could not do this without him.
Yeah.
Moving on to Tennant, with this whole media storm, let's face it, debacle with by the BBC. How long do you think it took for David Tennant to be announced as the 10th Doctor?
When was it announced that Eccleston was leaving again?
March 30th.
Okay, I'm gonna go July of that year.
Really? Because Parting of the Ways came out in June of that year.
Oh, never mind. So then it would have been right not too long afterwards, probably. I would assume.
April 16th. You kept shooting your darts at the April mark, and the one time you didn't, you missed it.
That's my life in a nutshell, folks.
Yeah, taking shots and missing them. And once again, it was the BBC press release on the website. It was originally supposed to be in the episode itself, but for reasons we mentioned earlier, it did not happen. Obviously, we all know David Tennant's last official episode, minus anniversary specials, important to point that out, was his last official episode as the Doctor in the End of Time Part 2 was in January 1st, 2010. When do you think he announced that he would be leaving?
Oh, it was a good year before, at least a year before that. I know there was a long amount of time because they're like, this is it. We're going to do some specials to wrap it up. And so I'd say it would probably...
You had to wait during that time.
Yeah. So, I'd probably say 2009 at some point, early.
The 29th of October, 2008.
Oh, okay. Wow. I didn't realize it was that. Wow.
And you know how that was announced to the world? Wrong.
Oh.
But keep that in mind. It was announced during the Royal Television Awards in a live feed after he just won an award for Best Dramatic Actor. He wasn't there to accept the award in person. He was doing a production of Macbeth.
Yeah.
But they actually had a live feed from the production of Macbeth, where he thanked everyone for the award. And during his speech, he let everyone know that he would continue to play the Doctor for a few more specials going all the way to 2009. But when the show came back in 2010, it wouldn't be him. And the entire audience just erupted in a giant mass of sadness.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, he's obviously the most popular Doctor, wouldn't you say? Like, I mean, I know Matt Smith's Doctor was the one that, like, was all over the mainstream, but, I mean, Tennant has to be the most popular.
I would like to believe so. Speaking of Smith, when do you think it was announced and how?
Oh, this one I know is Doctor Who Confidential. This one would have been 09.
Yep. It was the 3rd of January, 2009, in an episode of Doctor Who Confidential with basically no build-up. They just had an episode talking about all the classic era of Doctor Who, all the other Doctors, the other actors who played the role, and an interview with Tennant. They had a David Tennant kissing montage, which apparently is a thing. And during an interview with Stephen Moffat, who has announced he would be the new showrunner of the show, mid-sentence, they just cut to an image of Matt Smith talking about how excited he is getting the role. No one knew who this guy was. Why did he just show up on screen? And then, and then a banner shows up at the bottom of the screen saying, Matt Smith, the 11th Doctor. Like, it just came out of complete nowheresville, which is easily probably the most unique entry on this long list of actors.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, sadly, we kind of have to really rush things through because we have another show to get to after this. But Matt Smith announced his departure. When would you say?
What year was his last season? It would have been 2014?
His last episode officially was the Christmas special 2013.
Okay, so if I'm remembering timeline-wise, like when I watched it, because I remember when they announced Capaldi, it would have been summer then of 2012.
2012, really? Before Clara Oswald was introduced as a main companion. Because remember, she was introduced as Clara Oswald in the 2012 Christmas special, then a full-on companion the following year.
Okay, so no, never mind, 2013. But I do remember it was during the summer.
Yep, June 1st, 2013.
Yeah, because I remember I was sitting there. I can't remember the show. Forgive me. I know it was a BBC talk show, but I remember it's just like, and now for the new Doctor. It's like you got the little flash, you got the smoke, doors open, and Capaldi goes, "Hey."
No. Smith was announced in BBC on the BBC website, BBC News website. We will get to Capaldi, but first let's take a little bit of a pit stop for John Hurt.
Yes.
When do you think it was announced that he would be the War Doctor?
Well, I remember when they announced it, they weren't saying what Doctor he was. I remember that was under wraps. Like, I mean, they just... Sorry?
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if I'm remembering correctly, they told us where he would fall, but then they didn't say what kind of Doctor he would be. God, because when was the name of the Doctor released?
May 18th, if I remember correctly.
So it's got to be some point before that. So we're going to say February, March.
John Hurt was revealed as the Doctor on May 18th, 2013, in this title card, which ended the episode.
Yes, so that was the announcement?
That was when they announced that he was the Doctor officially.
Yeah, okay, because I remember they announced...
They only announced that he was cast as an unspecified role.
Yeah,
I didn't remember when that happened. But when they actually revealed him as the War Doctor, it was in the episode itself.
I remember watching that episode, it just erupting when it's like, as the Doctor, you're like, oh my God, one of the greatest British actors of our time.
Now, here's an interesting story that I have to tell, because about 210 people who have pre-ordered the season 6 7B Blu-ray received it a couple of days early.
Oh.
So they were able to watch this earth-shattering reveal ahead of time, and they did not spoil it. Because the BBC actually managed to contact all 210 people, asked them really, really nicely not to spoil it, and they even sent them exclusive interviews with Matt Smith and David Tennant from the 50th anniversary special as a show of good faith, and all 210 people stayed silent. And that kind of stuff doesn't happen in our modern times, where as soon as someone gets any kind of information, they leak it. Like, people sort of leak their way into productions just to take snapshots of actors filming something just to post it on their website for clicks and views. These people did not do that, which is just astounding to me. And that is why it is my favorite reveal of any Doctor, because of how the fans reacted. And that really does give me hope for the Doctor Who fan base.
Well, you know what they say, 50, silence will fall when a good man goes to war.
That is not the actual quote, but never mind. I'll forgive you.
I tried. That was a good base hit.
Why not? Do or do not. There is no try.
Yeah.
Now, we mentioned him several times on this episode. Capaldi.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's no point in building up the suspense. You already mentioned it a couple of times already. Doctor Who live event.
Yeah, it was
that was the one. Because they missed out on the Matt Smith one. Obviously, I got the John Hurt one the way I was supposed to, but that was the one I first saw it in live and happening in front of my eyes, because that was the one I stayed up to watch the announcement of the next Doctor. When do you think that happened? Reminder, name of the Doctor, May 18th, and obviously day of the Doctor, November 23rd. When do you think that happened?
Well, it was before November, because I remember watching the day of the Doctor, and no
attack eyebrows.
12. So I know it was before November. So I'm gonna say August.
Dude, August 4th. What is with you today?
I remember it being summer. That's the only thing I remember of the time frame was when it was summer. In summer.
Yeah, that is definitely a moment that sticks with me in my heart, and just the excitement the man has. He's the biggest Doctor Who fan of all time. Like, come on. Sure. Obviously, he announced his departure. I'm going to speed things along a little bit on January 30th. How do you think he announced his departure?
Wasn't it in an interview?
You're getting warmer.
I don't remember.
It was during a BBC Radio 2 show where he just casually dropped it. So, sort of similar to Tom Baker. He casually dropped it, and even the interviewer was like, wait, that was your last? He said it would be my last. And she was like, wait, your last? You would be leaving the show? Oh, yeah, I'll bow out after that. So, yeah. Going from the massive live announcement to this tiny, just almost offhand mention in a BBC radio show.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, just to be perfectionists, David Bradley, how do you think was announced as the first Doctor?
That one I don't remember. I remember him being announced, but I don't remember the specifics about it.
Well, he didn't. It was on the episode Dr. Falls, which aired on July 1st.
So there really was nothing for me to remember. Cool.
Yeah. I was trying to trick you. Ooh. Now, here's the one that I remember being a big, major thing at the time. Jodie Whittaker. Now, remember, Capaldi announced his departure on January 1st, 2017. How long do you think it took for Jodie Whittaker to be announced as the 13th Doctor?
Well, it was in 2017 as well, obviously. Oh dear Lord, what would the timeline be? I can tell. Okay, I don't know when she was announced, but I can tell you it was done in the teaser trailer for the upcoming season.
This is probably the most special one of all of them. Ironically.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't remember the timeline of it.
It was first a teaser that a new Doctor will be announced the day after the teaser came out on the Doctor Who YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And then they released the special live video of Jodie Whittaker receiving the TARDIS and going into the TARDIS, revealing that she's the next Doctor on July 16th during a tennis match, of all things.
So Wimbledon?
During a tennis match, they brought where millions of Doctor Who fans had to watch tennis for the first time in their lives, waiting for the trailer, for the teaser of Jodie Whittaker as the 13th Doctor, which is just crazy to me. And obviously, we're now living in an era where Whittaker has announced herself that she's leaving. When do you think that happened?
That was last year, wasn't it?
Yes, but when?
It was winter, wasn't it? I'm gonna say October. I'm just gonna go October.
July 29th.
Not even close.
And she announced it via the Doctor Who website. Now, again, just to be completionists here, how much further into the Jodie Whittaker seasons have you gotten?
I'm not done, but I'm in the middle of the second season. I did take a little bit of a break again.
Have you seen Fugitive of the Judoon yet?
No.
Well, I'm going to spoil it for you.
That's
Joe
fine.
Martin has been announced as a doctor.
Yeah.
Similar to the John Hurt one, it was announced in the episode itself. No one knew about it.
That one I do remember hearing about because everyone's like, who the hell is this new doctor?
Yeah, and unlike with John Hurt, no one knew about it early, which is interesting. Now, Ncuti Gatwa was officially announced to me, thanks to this guy right here, posting it on our Facebook Messenger group that we have with Ben. And he gave us a link to the official announcement.
That they announced it. It was announced in the article, yeah.
Now, no point in asking you, since you're the one who sent it to me, no point in asking you how that happened. It was during a press release at the BAFTA Awards, where...
it was the same day as the BAFTA Awards. The release came out the morning, and then they were able to finally talk about it on the red carpet that night, and you could see the joy in Russell T Davies' face and Ncuti Gatwa's face when they were like, we can finally talk about this.
Yeah. They knew about it since February.
Yeah.
Or something.
And I think Ncudi's going to do a great job.
I agree. But the thing I wanted to bring up here is that people online right now are assuming, or rather assumed at the time, that the reason it was done in such a comparatively underwhelming way compared to the other modern doctors was primarily because they were trying to get ahead of a leak once again. So, and obviously, just again, to be completionists, May 8th, 2022 was where they announced Ncuti Gatwa as the 14th Doctor. We cannot wait for that to happen. That is a story for another time. Since the two of us have to really cut this short, going into another show that Ben is now bursting at the seams, asking us where we are. Let's get through your plugs first, because that's half of mine.
Okay, so my plugs. You can find me on my personal Instagram and Twitter at soda_the_saxman. You can find me on this channel Wednesday nights in the Squirt Slice, which is our wrestling show. Thursday nights, which is Rewind the Tape, where me and Ben just talk for about half an hour about a movie in a particular series. What the hell did we just finish? We just finally finished the National Treasure movies because of personal reasons. I had to take a little bit of time off. Saturday afternoons, which is actually what we're about to go record here. 50 and I are joined by Ben on the Northern Countdown, which this airs Monday. So we just did our top 5 movie posters of all time, which is a pretty fun list. And then, of course, you can also find me Saturday afternoons on the Let's Get Ready Network on the Dropkicks, their wrestling show over there.
Sweet. Now, me, you can find me on all the other things that Sora has mentioned. I also have my own channel 50 Shades of Geek. That's pretty much it for me. And as I usually tend to do on this show, I like to plug all the other people that we're associated with. You can check out on this very same channel, like I sort of mentioned, the Squared Slice. And have you seen this with Snark and Daniel, and sometimes Dave? Dave can also has his monthly Northern Rankings show that he does on this channel. And you can also check out our aforementioned friend Taco on his channel, Something to Taco About, and our other good friend Jess the Kiwi on her channel, Kiwi Jess, where she descends into madness.
Yeah, you can I can't remember what the hell, I can't remember the name of the show was, but she's just on the Let's Get It Network talking about the most recent Friday Night Titans and what went down there.
Yeah, and also our good friend Ben has his own channel, Multiverse of Geekdom. He has a lot of really cool shows. Too many for me to list right now. So, thank you all for watching if you have. And until the next episode, which I can reveal right now, Mr. Soda, I will be needing your help on that one as well, potentially. Next month will be all about the music of Doctor Who.
I'm there. I'm there.
So stay tuned for that. And until then, everybody,
allons-y.
May the Doctor be with you.